Here.
Oh.
Okay, here we go again. Tasting number 110 of the Saratoga Whiskey Club. We're moving right along here in 2022. We're back to Zoom today, which actually is kind of refreshing. It's we got a little bit too comfortable with Zoom over the past couple of years, and then we started getting back into some in-person tastings, and it felt really good, but it's also different. And so it's nice to be able to have everybody from different parts of the Northeast with us tonight. We have New Hampshire, New Jersey, Massachusetts. I don't know if that might be it for now.
North Carolina.
Oh yeah, North Carolina. Sorry about that. Yeah,
Don't forget Dave in Maryland.
It
was 97 degrees here today. How did you guys do?
Oh boy, yeah, it was pretty warm, but not too bad. But we have a special guest with us tonight. This is why we're starting an hour early. We're keeping Donal McLynn up late at night in London, right? You're in London tonight?
Yeah, I'm in London. It's my home from home.
The Queen's holiday today, or Jubilee. So, you know, they're going to celebrate with some Irish whiskey tonight in London, which is great because we are too. But just to give you a little bit of background on Two Stacks from my perspective, before the shop opened, before First Fill Spirits opened, I was at Hamlet and Ghost, which is a restaurant here in Saratoga Springs, a great restaurant. And Brendan, the owner, said, "Hey, I've got this new Irish whiskey. I want you to taste it." I was like, "Sure, I'm always game." Had no idea what it was. He pulled out the Two Stacks cask strength bottling, and I tasted it and was pretty much wowed by it right away. And I found it so remarkable, you know, just looking at the back label of the blend that it is. And I'm sure Donald's going to explain all about that. But you know, we're in a new kind of era in whiskey where it's not just about which barrel tastes the best, or you know, which style of whiskey is the best. You know, we're kind of seeing a renaissance of blending these days, and both in American whiskey and abroad, and it's really exciting. I don't know, it's fun when you see it done right. And so I'm going to let Donal kind of give us a little background of his world. He's with Irish Craft Beverages, I believe is the name of it, or Ireland Craft Beverages. But then they started this Two Stacks brand. So without further ado, I'm going to let Donal introduce himself. But thank you very much for staying up late at night. And we're excited to have your bottles in our shop and to taste through this wonderful lineup tonight. We do have two special bottles that he sent to us ahead of time as well, so we get to try those as well. But thank you so much. We're very excited about this.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks so much for the introduction, Charles. And I must obviously thank you first and foremost for supporting us. Given that we're a small independent company, you know, it's not easy competing in the big game with large companies, particularly in the United States. So it's this kind of grassroots tastings that like really builds a brand and brings in an ethos and what we're trying to generate behind the brand. So yeah, first of all, thanks so much for bringing me on tonight. And yes, hopefully I can, you know, after tonight, some of your guests and your the taster of this whiskey will be able to leave here very happy and a bit more educated in what we do. And you know, the next time they go to a bar and they see Two Stacks on the shelf, it'll be the first thing they'll order. So that's kind of the message we're trying to get out there. But I'll start off kind of pretty basic in regards to our background. So I'm one of the co-founders of Two Stacks Whiskey. I grew up in County Sligo, which is on the northwest coast of Ireland, and my background generally is in the drinks industry, kind of the pub trade. The pub that my family run in Sligo town is a fourth generation pub that was started by my great grandfather in 1889, and it's now been run by my eldest brother, who took it over from my father, who retired about 10 years ago. So you can say I was bartending at a very young age. So the drink industry is in my blood, to the lack of a better phrase. And Two Stacks kind of was a vision. Really, it came about because myself and two business colleagues, Shane McCarthy and Liam Brogan, we started a company, as you mentioned, called Ireland Craft Beverages about 7 years ago, and we were an export platform for craft distilleries and breweries all across Ireland, trying to help them to find new markets in different parts of the world, like the United States, the Middle East, Asia, continental Europe. And at the time, there was a huge boom in craft breweries. Now, I know you've had craft breweries in the States for decades, and you guys are kind of the pinnacle of what craft beer is. And that was starting to kind of, the tide was starting to come over to Ireland and Europe. And we were very lucky, we're fortunate that we kind of got our foot in the game in regards to helping some of the up and coming breweries. But then that spilled into like craft distilleries. So we started working with smaller brands like Dingle, I'm sure you're probably aware of, or Ecklandville Distillery. And over the 7 years of knowledge that it just built up, we developed Two Stacks Whiskey because, we saw all these kind of companies that were kind of fledgling companies kind of sprouting out of nowhere. And, we knew that we had the knowledge and we had the expertise in the industry to say, look, if anyone's going to start a whiskey brand, it's going to be us. And I think the only thing that gave us a kick, really, that lit a fire under our arses, to speak, is that what COVID happened. Overnight, half our revenue was cut in half. We lost a lot of business. Everything from the lockdown pretty much shut down a huge proportion of our revenue, and that gave us the emphasis to start Two Stacks Whiskey. So we created the company 2 years ago, and we came up with the idea that it wasn't one thing of just bringing an Irish whiskey into the market. People aren't really going to take notice. It was even at that time, it was very loud place. It was hard to be noticed. And I think trying to generate any sort of recognition or attention, be it through social media or through word of mouth, it takes a lot of money in regards to marketing. So we decided to put whiskey in a can, which is our own product called Dram in a Can. And it's a 100 ml can of our blended whiskey, which you probably taste the same as the blender's cut, it has been cut to 43%. And this was launched in the United States in March of 2021. And on the back of that, we've just seen quite a steady rise in our sales, our growth, our popularity. And we've just now commissioned our own warehouse in Newry in County Down. So it's a 6,000 foot square warehouse. It's a bonded warehouse where we're allowed to hold our own casks and blend our own whiskey. So that's kind of where things have come and evolved. It's evolved extremely quickly. Like it literally came out of nowhere. We didn't expect to be where we are at this point 2 years ago. And if you told us we would be, I think you're talking crazy. And what we want to do in the space is really we try and want to bring transparency, creativity, and adventurism into the kind of the space of Irish whiskey, because for so long it's been dominated by such large companies, and they've been throwing out fairly mediocre blends and mediocre whiskey that really hasn't captivated an audience that I feel has been lost. It's particularly been lost to the Scotch industry. And now that you see the Japanese whiskies have come on mainstream, and also American bourbon and whiskies, they've started to take over a large proportion of sales too. But Irish whiskey in general, back in the 1800s, we were the largest brown spirits after rum consumed in the world. We dominated Scotch sales 3-1 at one point, and people kind of forget this, that Irish whiskey really was the pinnacle of the spirit to drink at one stage in time. And slowly but surely, we're now starting to gather momentum, and we're seeing a huge, double-digit growths for the past 30 years. And in fairness, that's been led by Jameson. And I'd always say that Jameson have paved the road for a lot of the smaller players like ourselves to kind of give us the opportunity to be where we are. But now that you kind of see that Jameson also have their own, you know, I never want to talk bad on anybody else, but they kind of have their own idea of what Irish whiskey is in terms of the definition of, say, a single pot still whiskey. It has to be a certain mash bill that's been written into the geographical identification, and that's all been changed now as well. So what we are setting out to do, what was very popular in Ireland back in the early 1900s, was something called bonding. I know bottle and bond is something you have in the States for quite a long time, but a bonding warehouse essentially in Ireland is where somewhere that's it's free of tax, that you can hold alcohol and you can blend your own whiskey, and then once it leaves the warehouse, it's taxed after that. But this used to be a staple of every town in Ireland. Every grocer would be having mini bonders where if they were importing, say, casks from Spain or the Iberian Peninsula, or, you know, the likes of Sicily or Italy or wherever else, if they're selling wine themselves, they'd roll their casks into like the nearest distillery, have them filled with a spirit, and they'd age their casks in their own cellars, and then they'd sell it through their own grocers. And you find this across Ireland. Most towns and cities would have operated like this. It's very rare that actual distilleries sold their own product in their own bottle. Maybe William Jameson or Powers, like they were probably the predominant brands that used to sell their own whiskey, but majority of their bulk whiskey was sold to the smaller players who would kind of bottle it themselves, and that's where a lot of the bulk went. But now that's slowed, that, you know, over the years, that kind of industry had stopped just due to regulation, and we're trying to bring that back. We're not a distillery. We don't want to be a distillery. What we want to do is, you know, maybe we'd love to go down to Waterford and pick up a couple of casks from Waterford and blend them with a couple of casks from Connacht Distillery and give you something completely unique that you'll never be able to taste again. And that's what we're trying to kind of replicate, that you've seen in a lot of the Scottish players like Douglas Line or Cadenheads, or even the Johnny Walkers. Like, they're a blender, you know, they're not a distillery. And Ireland has a lost art in regards to this, and we're hoping to revive it. You know, there's a couple of other brands like JJ Corey and JJ O'Connell, but yeah, we're trying to maybe, you know, develop that side of the Irish whiskey industry, and, you know, lay down interesting casks over the next few years. And so yeah, we're at a very young stage at the moment, but we're kind of slowly getting to where we want to go. Yeah, so that's kind of a small snippet of what we're about and what we're trying to achieve in the space at the moment.
So with this first dram, and I don't know if we're going to do these in the order that you want to do them. We're going to start. You can do them
whatever order you see fit.
If you see something that should be done before the other, you know, please feel free to let us know. But we were going to start with the regular cask strength first, and then we were going to do Barbados, then the Brandy, then the Sauternes, and then the Tawny port. I don't know if it's okay to do it in that order.
Yeah. Like this is your show.
All right. Well, it's your show as well. So, yeah. So tell us a little bit about this first one, so we can start sipping. These are all cask strength. This first one is 65% ABV. Yeah. So we're talking 130 proof, which is quite something. So definitely
it's actually come down to. It's come down to 64% now. Yeah, so it's actually we've dropped it down to 64 because the first batch we did, which is nearly 2 years ago now, came out at 65, and ever since then it's been around the 64, 60.5. So we just kind of dropped it to 64. But this is what we call the Blender's Cut. Like you said, it's cask strength, and I know particularly in the Americas, they love their cask strength whiskey. But it's a 5-part component. I like to say it's got 4 types of distillate. We use 3 types of casks. It's 2 different types of bottlings. One that's at 64, the other one is at 43, and then we always have one great taste with it. But that's kind of my marketing spiel for that one. But this on the back, we're like, as I said, we're very transparent in regards to what we do or where we source a whiskey. how we blend it, and we try and provide as much information as possible on the label so we can give the consumer that confidence that when they're buying it, they know exactly what they're drinking. Because I think a lot of companies over the years have tried to pull the wool over people's eyes and, you know, use caramel coloring, or, you know, if it's non-chill filtered, or if there's certain casks that, you know, it's only been rested and not aged, and et cetera, et cetera. So basically, this is the first release we brought out, and the other four ranges you'll be tasting after this is basically the same blend that was finished in the variety of casks that you mentioned. But you kind of notice on the back, the 40% light grain and 40% dark grain. Now, if people will be wondering, is that a different type of grain, or what's that? What does that exactly that mean? Essentially, it was trying to simplify the aging process of a grain whiskey that's made in a column still. It's like similar to your corn whiskey that you make in the United States, but it's made in a column still, a continuous distillation still. Light grain, essentially, it's the same grain whiskey that's been finished in ex-bourbon casks, and the dark grain is the same grain that's been finished in virgin oak casks. But when you take them out of the cask, the color is completely different. You get more of a straw light color with the ex-bourbon. With the virgin oak, you get this far dark color because it's ripped out all those tannins.
What kind of grain is it?
So it's maize. So we most of the grain whiskey. Now Ireland's got this. You know, Ireland is fairly well known for its grain whiskey. Now it is used in most of its blends, but we import most of our grain whiskey from France. So maize, but this particular grain would have about 5% malted barley in it. So it's about 95% maize, 5% malted barley. And, you know, being a key component in the whiskey, it obviously gives it quite a sweetness to it, but it was important for us not to have something that was too overpowering, too harsh on the palate. And that's why we had to implement more kind of structure into this type of whiskey, where we have our 10% double malt. So double malt is essentially, it doesn't mean it's two single malts combined. Double malt for us, what I have to explain is double distilled. So another myth about Irish whiskey is it has to be triple distilled. That's nonsense. Irish whiskey can be triple distilled or double distilled. So with double distilled malts, it essentially gives you a bit more fruit, a bit more body, a bit more kind of heaviness in the whiskey. And then on top of that, we've gone with 8% single pot still whiskey, which is, again, a unique whiskey. It can be only created in Ireland under the GI protection. That's made from this particular single pot still is unmalted malted barley. And we've went 8%, and we finished that's been aged in Oloroso sherry casks. So we wanted that kind of that rich, oily, spicy texture you get from single pot still whiskey, but also you want to get that dried fruits that the Oloroso sherry cask will provide. And then to top it off, you know, peated whiskey, again, another myth about Irish whiskey is there is no peated whiskey in Ireland. Like it's a myth that, you know, and a lot of distilleries back in the day, maybe in the early 1900s, late 1800s, we had a lot of distilleries doing peated whiskey, and it died out of fashion because the Scotch had kind of dominated that part of the industry. But with this, you know, if you were to drink this whiskey without the 2% peated element in it, it would be a completely different animal. It really harmoniously binds all the flavors together, and it's very subtle, but you kind of know it's there. It's kind of like a campfire, like a dusting of campfire smoke on the palate. When we first came up with the concept of this blend, we were the only, really, it's a 5-hour blend. We were kind of the only blenders who had used peat, and now we're seeing far more bottlers and independent brands using peated whiskey because they see it as a great component, and it's a great way of allowing a whiskey to show more complexity even when it's a young whiskey, because the spirits we're using here is about 3 to 4 years old, so it's nothing that old, but it's a whiskey that I'd kind of call a bit dirty. It's a bit of a dirty whiskey, like, or muddy, you know what I mean?
So lots of questions here, like,
yeah,
how, like, I mean, seriously, I've never seen, you know, a blend. I mean, maybe Compass Box occasionally will get, you know, pretty crazy with their blends and be transparent about it. But, you know, how did you come up with this recipe or this blend. I mean, I don't even know where you would start to come up with something like this. You know, it's
well, it took us about 6 months. So that's but we're very like all the liquid sourced from one distillery called Great Northern Distillery, and you know, a lot of your people who are drinking whiskey tonight and maybe not as familiar with the Irish scene, but a lot of the independent brands are buying from this one distillery because they are the Colossus kind of distillery behind Middleton that are producing the biggest volume, and it's only for white label brands they do it, and it's run by John Teeling, who you probably all know is the father of the sons of the Teeling distillery, sold Cooley back to Beam Suntory a few years back, and he set up Great Northern Distillery. And this man, so we what they do is you know, you go into one of their blending rooms, and they're like, well, what do you want to do? What flavor profile would you like? What's your price point? All these kind of parameters that are going to factor in what exactly the product you want to bottle. And you've got a library of different flavors, different casks, different spirits, different distillates. Not different spirits, sorry, different distillates. So it's obviously column still, it's double malt, it's double distilled malt, it's triple distilled malt, it's single pot still, it's peated malt, all these kind of variables that you can put into a whiskey, and you can come out of the room with 1,000 different types of blends. And you know, obviously to keep things economical, you have to use quite a large amount of grain, but grain whiskey, because all you get is kind of one standard kind of flavor. Like it's more of that kind of it's kind of a dry vanilla note, and then it's got a kind of a harsh to burny finish, and it's not that pleasant. And I've tasted it in so many Irish whiskies throughout the years. It's like, oh, this isn't going to work. And they were using a lot of virgin oak casks, and with that, the virgin oak gives you a lot more depth and complexity for such a young spirit. So it's like, well, this is a great component to use because it allows us to keep the high proportion of grain. It keeps things economical. So, you know, we're gonna keep that at about 80%. So that's kind of, that base is covered, you know, and then you just kind of, when you've got your base, it's like building a house, you know, you have the foundations, and then you just add what's gonna, you know, make most sense structurally. And we wanted to put in a single pot still because quintessentially it's Irish. It's the only thing that, you know, is truly an Irish whiskey, is single pot still, because the rest can be distilled anywhere else. The Oloroso sherry cask was a very important point because you want that sweetness coming through. And then, you know, the double distilled malts, again, the body, that was a no-brainer. It's ex-bourbon cask, so it's not going to overrule the other flavors. It's just kind of there for more mouthfeel. And I think whiskey, out of everything in when you're drinking whiskey, yeah, mouthfeel for me is as important as flavor, because if you got something that's very thin, it's just, you know, it doesn't feel like you're drinking something that's enjoyable, or it's not an adventure. And you know, that was more important than most things. And then yeah, you know, one of the guys was, we kind of settled on, it was like a 40-40 10-10, and then we were like, oh, there's something missing here, we don't know what it is. And then one of the guys like, why don't we just put in some peated malts and see how that really, you know, how does that help? And that just kind of took it up to another level. Like, we're like, holy shit, this is like something we've never tasted before. And so it just kind of married. I mean, you could call it luck. I mean, you know, half of it could be luck. You know, I'm not going to blow smoke up, you know, and you know, tell us it was like, oh, we knew exactly what we wanted, but we knew what we didn't want. We didn't want to have another Irish whiskey that was just going to be, you know, the same old story. It's got like a medium to short finish. It's got a bit of sweetness. It's got a bit of vanilla, and then that's it. And then people will go, oh, that's very smooth. It's like, well, no, we don't want ours to be smooth. We want it to be rememberable. And so, yeah, we kind of we ran with that, and you know, it's kind of shown us it's had success in regards to all the different casks we've used it in as well. So
one of the interesting things about this whiskey is that I put it in. We do an advent calendar for the club, and it's a tricky calendar because it's blind and you have to guess what it is you're drinking. And I did put this in the calendar this last year, and one of the categories that you have to guess is the ABV. nobody was even close to 65%. It doesn't taste as a 65% ABV. I mean, it tastes cask strength, there's no question, but I don't know. To me, it doesn't. I mean, it's got that brightness from the grain, but the ABV doesn't show.
Yeah, it is a dangerous whiskey to be. I mean, I make old fashions with it, and I mean, after the third old fashioned, I I forget how to get to bed.
So when you're oh, go ahead, Peter.
2 questions. One, do you marry the 5 components together for any period of time in a cask before you bottle it? Or do you just dump and then bottle? And the other question you talked about initially with Johnny Walker sort of stifling, the way I understood it, the mash bill for a pot still. So was that by law how much malted and unmalted? Or are there differences now that are showing up?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So with the first question in regards to how we marry it, I mean, just due to the volume in regards to what we have to supply to the market, we have everything vatted and then left for a couple of days, and then that's all bottled. But we don't do an extra marrying or in the cask itself. They probably wouldn't need it, and an extra few days here and there is not going to make much of a difference. And on the point of your second question, you're probably thinking of Jameson or Pernod Ricard. So they're the dominant player in terms of the single pot still category, and they've historically, Irish single pot still was any type of mash bill that was you could throw in your oats, rye, your wheat, unmalted barley or barley, and you could call it a single pot still historically. Now, generally, most distilleries would have done a large proportion would have been unmalted or malted barley, and then it would have made up a quantity of oats, wheat, and rye. But it really all depended on what the harvest was like that year in Ireland, because predominantly most of the grain that was being used in distilling was grown locally. But as things kind of change into more of a global economic force in regards to buying grains from different parts of the world, things changed inevitably. But Jameson, they had written into the rule of the geographical identification with the European Union that single pot still had to be a maximum of oats, wheat, or rye, and the majority had to be unmalted, malted barley. So now this has been changed. The legislation has currently been changed, where the minimum quantity for other cereals outside of barley can be 30%. So it's a huge jump back into the historical significance of what Irish whiskey truly was, because oats played a huge part in Irish whiskey for decades, because we grow an abundant amount of oats here in Ireland, and it really kind of was stifling a lot of innovation in Ireland, what Jameson and the bigger players are doing, because it kind of kept things simple for them, and it kept competition at a certain, they were able to control the competition. But now that we're seeing a massive explosion of distilleries popping up all over Ireland, there's like 40 distilleries now. Even Bono's got a distillery. That just shows you where we're going. So, the legislation needed changing, because it's when you taste a single pot still whiskey, there is nothing like it. It is completely unique, and it's been a bit nursed for the last few years. So we need to it needs changing.
That's changed, because one of the most exciting things is seeing all these new pot still whiskeys coming from all these different distilleries now, and it's
absolutely,
and they're playing around with it, and they're going back to some original recipes, or at least trying to get close to what original recipes they might remember or find in history books. But on our shelves, we love pot still, and outside of the Redbreast is great, and we have some fun Method and Madness stuff that's great as well. But to see, you know, even Teeling and Dingle and all of these other people playing around with pot still, that's what's really fun for us.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure. I don't know if you kept an eye.
Lock, you know, all of them. So
I mean, if you kept an eye on what Buon Distillery are doing, they're working with Finan O'Connor, who's he's doing a PhD in historic mash bills, and they've done an incredible experiment with 10 different mash bills from some of the top distilleries back in the 1800s, and some of the stuff they produced, it was like, it was different level. And so we've acquired a number of their casks as well. So, you know, we can't wait in, you know, 3 to 4 years time what the results will be. You know, it's just going to completely change people's ideas of you know, what a single pot still can be. So it's exciting, but yeah, we've some time to go.
All right, so let's talk.
I have a quick question, Charles.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to be an uphill battle though? Because we do get a lot of folks in the shop they're so attached to that flavor profile now that that's been marketed to them, which is Redbreast and, you know, the spot whiskeys and, you know, a lot of those classic kind of 50-50 mixes of malted and unmalted barley. Do you think that adjusting to that is going to be quite the battle? Because I know that's what folks are asking for when they say, I like pot still, I like Redbreast. You know, they're used to that kind of grassy, creamy spice from those styles.
Is that to me or Charles?
To you, Donal. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Holly. I don't think you're going to lose the predominant flavor profile of single pot still, because most of the distilleries will be using unmalted malted barley as their majority of their, you know, their cereal. But I think what you're going to find is a bit more creaminess, oats, or you get a bit more spiciness from the rye, or you might get a bit more you might even get more grassy notes from, say, wheat that's been used, or a bit more sweetness. And it really, I think Redbreast have done an amazing job. They've absolutely exploded in popularity in the last 2-3 years in the United States. It's incredible what they've done. So much so that they're running out of stock, that they can't keep up with demand. And the only thing is, I find that I've tasted a lot of Redbreast now, and I kind of get a bit bored of it, and that's just me. But I think sweetness is a big player. Like, you know, the sweeter the cask, the nicer the whiskey is kind of what people think for, what they go for. But I think that that's not really showcasing what it should be, and it's really just educating your customer. It's kind of showing them, it's like, well, you know, Redbreast has done this, but have you tried a heavier mash bill with oats aged in, say, you know, a Marsala cask? And then you give them an example, and it's something that blows their mind, and they're like, well, it's a night and day between that and a Redbreast. It's kind of just showing them, you know, the difference in terms of the character rather than competing with it. And, you know, we won't know for the next few years what's going to come out of Ireland in regards to it. So, if, you know, Redbreast will dominate. And, you know, I think they're going to continue to dominate. You know, they're pumping out millions of LPA a year. But I think if your customers coming in and asking and actually curious about different single pots, then you kind of won half the battle, really, because if they're curious, then you need to, you know, sell the sizzle, as we say.
Sell the sizzle. All right. Yeah. All right. So for these next 4 with these finishes, they're all the same mash bill or blend that you use for the blender's cut.
Yeah, so this was kind of, so before, like, 2 stacks was really a thing, or it was just, well, it was a bit of fun, really, with me and my 2 colleagues. Our first purchase of whiskey from Great Northern Distillery was 1,000 litres of the blender's cut. And we had an IBC, which is like a large kind of container, and we brought that up to Cologne Distillery, who we work with very closely, and we working out of their bonded warehouse, which is basically a shed. I'm not joking. It's the shed on the side of a mountain. And it's got the room. It has room for maybe 4 people, 5 people in there. And it's
nice.
It's like, yeah. So we were there, and we bottled up Blender's Cut, and we did a limited batch at the start because our main release for the United States was going to be the first cut, and that was kind of a trial whiskey we were going to do with our importer just to see how the reception would be. But we're like, well, it's such an interesting blend. We've got extra stock. We've got about 1,000 liters here. We need to do something with it. So we chose 4 styles of casks, and we were like, well, let's just stick it in these casks and see what happens. And then we found a really good brokerage based in Bordeaux, and they source some of the best casks around the world. They rework them and then they sell them on. And so we found obviously a 20 port. Port is obviously one of those casks that's synonymous with finishing whiskey, and those rich dried fruits you'll always get. And then Barbados rum, again, synonymous, the sweetness, you come through tropical fruits, all that. Sauternes, more of a challenge. We picked Sauternes because we didn't know much about it. We thought, it was a very difficult, we've heard that it's a very difficult cask to work with in just terms of like getting the best out of it. So like, well, we'll try it and see what happens. And then an Apricot Brandy from Turkey. We're like, okay, we've never seen an Irish whiskey done in an Apricot Brandy cask, so let's roll with that and see what happens. And so yeah, we finished it for 6 to 8 months in each cask, and the result is what you have in your glass. So which one are we going for first?
So we're starting with the rum.
Rum, okay.
And there were only 255 bottles of this. So this is really, truly it's not a single cask, but it is one barrel.
It is essentially.
So it is technically a single cask blend, and finished in Barbados rum. Just so all of you know, going forward with these next 4 bottles, we only have what we have, and we can't get any more. We just found out today. So there's 2 rum, there's 1 brandy, there's 2 Sauternes, and there's 2 port. That's it. So if you're interested in any of these, there's only 2 of each of these, or actually just 1 of the Apricot Brandy. So that's it, because this is only 255 bottles of this one.
What is the proof on all of those?
These are 63.5.
Yeah. So
127.
Yeah. So you find when you put the liquid into the cask, you lose some of your ABV. But yeah, Barbados rum, it's a plantation rum cask, a 5-year-old plantation rum cask that was in really good condition when we got it. And this is actually a second fill. So we did a first fill for Europe, and we did the second fill. So all these bottlings you have is an exclusive for the United States, but it's the second fill from each cask, which actually was a benefit to your market, because the first fill kind of was a bit overpowering. We did about 3 months on the first fill. We sold that domestically in Ireland, some went to the UK. That was pretty much it. And then we did a second refill for about 6 to 8 months on these casks. And it's a bit more mellow, but it's got all those kind of flavors you want from the rum.
Donal, is the plantation cask, is that before or after finishing Armagnac? Finishing
before, so it's ex-bourbon. So ex-bourbon, then plantation rum.
So it's pure rum, not sweetened, no dosage to it.
Yeah, I mean, if our agency Cooperage is to be believed, that's the line they went with. So I can only give you the information they give me. But yeah, as far as I know, it hasn't been sweetened, so it's ex-bourbon, then 5-year-old plantation rum. But I mean, have you seen, is plantation or rum cask finish is quite a popular choice in where you're based?
We're starting to see more. Actually, just yesterday we got another rye in that's finished in rum, but it is, we're starting to see more. single malts, or we have the opposite too, a rum finished in single malt. There's just a lot of things that are happening with rum these days, it seems. But.
Yeah, I think you're going to see probably more of that because the access to good sherry casks. I mean, we're hearing stories of just, you know, the likes of, say, Macallan or even Jameson. They basically buy out the whole bodegas in Spain, and they have them all commissioned. All the barrels are commissioned by them, and the sherry is made, and a lot of it's actually either used for cooking or it's dumped. So it's just used to season the cask. Yeah. And it's shipped back to Ireland for filling. So the quality of casks isn't the same. Like, you know, that's one thing we try and pride ourselves on, is getting good quality casks. Because we're a small operator. So, you know, we've no problem maybe finding one of the two casks that, like, a 50-year-old port cask or something we'd love to work with. But
just out of curiosity, how much are these casks? How much do they cost to get plantation cask? Or
I mean, the plantation rum is fairly accessible. You're looking around about $250 for a cask. You know, maybe $200, but then you'd go up to some of the 500-liter very good sherry casks. They maybe about $500-600 per cask. So it's quite an expense to. And then, you know, you've only got maybe 2 to 3 fills out of it. But I'd be interested to know, out of all the 4 we do of these, it'd be interesting to know what one is the favorite and what one people find the sweetest.
This one is very tasty, I have to say. It's gonna.
Yeah, no, I think it worked really well. I mean, you can't go wrong with rum, right? You know, you're gonna get tropical fruits. You're gonna get a kind of lychee or banana. You know, the good nose on it. There's a nice finish on it, and it's not too overly sweet. It's probably, I suppose, out of all the 4 too, I think it's probably for me, it's probably the most well balanced. But that's just my personal.
Shalom just said that, so there you go.
So next one, what are we doing?
We're doing apricot brandy. So
brandy.
You said it was a Turkish apricot brandy?
Yeah, so a brand called Mat in Turkey. So it's a cognac style spirit that's fermented with apricots, and then it's aged in French oak casks. And it's aged in the oak cask for about 3 to 5 years. And when we saw this, we're like, Jesus, we don't know what we're going to do with this. But I mean, it's too good to pass up, because I've never tasted an apricot brandy until I bought a bottle just specifically so I know the tasting profile of it. But I hate saying we were the first to do this, and we were first, but we hadn't seen this been done before, and it's actually turned out to be our most popular release of the Blender's cask finish series. I think it's just completely unique. Like, it's such a jammy nose. It's got so much jam on the nose. Like, you know.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's like marmalade, apricot, honey.
Wow.
You know.
It's hot but delicate. It's very beautiful. Out of curiosity, when you went to the Great Northern, Great Northern Distillery, was it just the 3 of you, or did you bring like somebody who had blended before, or do they you with people, or how does that work?
Yeah, so Brian Watts is the kind of, well, he'll never say it, but he's a master distiller. Like, he knows the ins and outs of, like, it's Ireland's second largest distillery in regards to output, and he's a Scottishman, and he's done most of his trade in Scotland, but he's been working with Great Northern Distillery for maybe since it's opened anyway. And you basically go into kind of a lab. And he's at a computer, and you've got hundreds of bottles everywhere of all different finishes and all different spirits that's been distilled different ways. And you're just kind of messing. It's like being in a lab, like you're a 12-year-old. You're just kind of putting different whiskeys into different kind of things. And you're mucking about, and he's kind of saying, well, this might work. And so he's got a formula he puts on his computer that allows him to know different ABVs that will blend the best with certain ABV whiskies to do proportionally. So it's kind of it's a bit of a mathematical kind of equation to the whole thing. And without his guidance, really, we would have been kind of lost. But
so he's there. He is at the
he's physically there going, you guys, he has to oversee what we want to do, and he just kind of he pulls the trigger then. So
gotcha.
Yeah,
I didn't know if you had somebody that you brought with you, possibly, for that.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, like we've been working on whiskey maybe 4 or 5 years. We're novices in regards to how things. It's going to take us years to train our palates and train our techniques and blending.
For sure.
And we've only commissioned our own blending kind of warehouse. So eventually, at some point, we'll be able to do stuff like compass box, like ourselves. We call ourselves blenders, but we're blenders in the sense that we've come up with ideas for blends. But we're hoping to do our first actual blend at the warehouse this year with two distilleries that have never been blended before in Ireland. And when that happens, it's going to be very exciting. But we're kind of reliant on a lot of the expertise from our peers that are in the game for decades. So we're young guys. But what's the consensus on this one?
Very nice.
This is very nice.
Yeah, this is really nice.
I didn't think I was going to like it.
It's unique. It's unique. A lot of perfume on the palate. A lot of I'm getting a lot of roses. Crushed rose oil and rose water. It's not as hot as the previous ones, but then again, maybe it's just my palate getting used to it.
I was going to say we found this one much hotter than the rum.
Oh, yes.
So
the rum was gentler. I thought the rum was softer on the heat, but
yes, that's what we thought also. Right.
But I like the finish on this one. This is my favorite finish of the 3 so far. I'm getting cloves, and some of the apricot comes back out again in the finish.
Yeah, I'm with John though. I don't taste this one as hot as the rum one.
Yeah. Right, and the first one was the hottest of the 3 so far, but then again, it was the first one at a pretty high alcohol level.
True. Yep.
I've not been drinking a lot of cask strength lately, and so it's I'm out of shape.
John, you're Mr. Cask strength. What are you talking about?
That's what I'm saying. I'm out of shape. Use it or lose it.
You were always doing non-cask strength.
I wouldn't say you have to get to the gym, but you have to get to the bar.
Should we start calling you Mr. 43%?
Let's not get carried away. Maybe 50%.
No, it's fun. This is it's interesting seeing how these. I love doing side by sides like this with the same thing but just finished in different casks. We just did a single cask Macallan tasting a few weeks ago where we had 3 different casks. And
nice.
Macallan is Macallan and whatever, but it was still pretty cool to see how it changed drastically.
Yeah. For sure.
Still on the same day, everything was the same, just the casks were different. So
what's the ABV on this one?
63.5.
They're all the same.
Oh, they are. Okay.
They're all 127.
I'm finding the spiciness very pleasant, and it's got a very luxurious mouthfeel. And I love the fruitiness. The jam is definitely lovely.
Yeah, it's very jammy. Yeah.
I was just going to say that you don't have the context for this, but usually the type of back and forth comments, not about the whiskey, usually don't come out till usually the 4th or 5th or 6th dram. So you've gotten this on by the 3rd. That's sort of the record.
Is that a successful night? Is it?
Yeah, the higher ABV that we're starting out with. I think it's
maybe some of us haven't had dinner yet.
That's true too. Yes.
Like when Charles emailed me, was we're gonna do 4 or 5 of the cast strength. I'm like, Jesus Christ, you're gonna kill your audience. Like,
no, you don't know it.
The theme of our club is doesn't come in cask strengths. That's who we are. We like it very much.
I like it. I like it. You're my type of crowd.
And that's the beauty of the Zoom tastings too, because driving is out of the picture for.
Yeah, I know a lot of the people who are out of the area, it definitely helps to be able to do these Zooms.
Sure.
All right, so we're going to do Sauternes next. So this is the one that you weren't sure about when you,
Yeah, so Sauternes, I've never, there's one Sauternes.
Next to here, so.
Sauternes is a tricky cast to work with. Just because it's super dry. And then the honeydew is like a difficult kind of flavor profile to play with. Sauternes, yeah. So for me, actually the second fill Sauternes worked out a lot better for us. But I'll be honest, it's probably my, I haven't actually tasted this in quite a while, but it's out of the four, this one I'm probably the least happy personally of what we've done with it.
All right. Just honesty is good, transparency.
But I think the second fill, it really helps. The first fill for us was it was a bit all over the place, but the second fill, I think it's come a bit more to the fore in regards to just a bit more balanced. But it's a cask I would be very apprehensive to work with it again in the future. Just
when you said first versus second, these are, I think, which are we talking about? The Sauternes? Are we talking about the
Sauternes?
The virgin oak before also.
Yeah, well, the component has virgin oak, but the finishing of Sauternes, it's a difficult cask to work with. What I found, I haven't found an Irish whiskey yet that's been done in Sauternes that I haven't sit back and go, okay, I really, really like this. I'll need to try it again. I mean, Teeling's 24-year-olds, they won the World Whiskey Award with a Sauternes finish.
Yeah.
But when you're using Bushmill stock, you're always going to win a couple of awards. So.
Especially if it's 24 years. But
yeah.
So the first and second are your use of the Sauternes cask?
Yeah, this is the second fill.
Yeah.
So,
okay. When you refer to the first or second, it's when you have used that Sauternes for finishing.
Right.
No. So we used the first fill. The first fill we used, and then that was sold domestically, and then so we refilled it, and then that's it gave us a bit more. It gave us a bit more balance in the whiskey. So it was, I suppose. At the start, there was a lot of spice on the first fill, and then there was a lot kind of a honey, a melon / honeydew element to it, and then one year I think it was John mentioned the perfume note. I got more perfume note on the previous Sauternes fill we did, but this one was actually a bit more balanced. It's a bit more enjoyable.
This has a lot.
I think this one.
There you go.
But this one, I get a large peppermint taste.
Yes, yes, it's got a lot of spice.
Lots of mint. That's what's coming.
So imagine that it was far more spicy in the first fill, and it was just, and so I actually find a bit of water helps this one particularly. A bit of water drop into this one helps it.
I got an oiliness. The first nose that I got had this oiliness, and then that went away right away. But it's more subtle on the nose than the other ones we've had. But it starts out very smooth.
I like this one.
Yeah,
I actually think it's pretty well balanced. The finish is a little short compared to the others, but I like it.
Everybody, you got to add a couple of drops. Trust me. It opens this up immensely. The sweetness comes through immensely on this.
Yeah,
big.
Absolutely agree.
I just did that. You're right.
Yeah.
Completely changes it. Makes it much sweeter in a way and open and
you get the Sauternes character a little bit more.
Yeah, I think this I really like the best so far because it has
oddly the viscosity picks up. It coats my tongue more with some water in it.
Yeah. It's definitely two different scores between with water and without for me.
A lot more floral.
Yeah.
A lot more honey with the water.
Yeah, not as floral as the apricot though. I mean, that's as floral as I've had in a whiskey.
Oh, right. I didn't think of, I mean, I thought the apricot was the less floral for me when I did the 4, which is interesting.
Yeah, I've got them side by side. The Sauternes has a lot more of the flowery notes. Do you still have any left, John, of the?
Oh, yeah, plenty, yeah.
Compare them side by side.
See, I'm still getting that perfume, rose dominant flavors in the apricot.
It's the most floral that we've had all night. It's very floral.
To me, it's rose water. I mean, very strong rose water, but it's rose water.
Just a bit,
Is that something you want to be drinking, though?
I think. I mean, I'm enjoying this as a unique flavor profile for a whiskey.
Yeah.
It's not something, and in certain situations or moods, I think it would be a really nice touch. It's not something I would want to drink exclusively.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like what we do these kind of cask experimentations just to see what we hit and what we don't, and what people like and what they don't. And it's really the feedback we get is like, well, this works, this doesn't. No,
I'll tell you, the Sauternes with some water really is really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think
it's delicious, but it's delicious, but the finish is a little flat. Is my only comment on it.
With the water?
I mean, the palate's great, the balance is great. It's just the finish kind of just peters off a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. I mean, I think it's the dryness of the cask as well. I think
they're all delicious whiskeys though. So I mean,
why would the cask be dry? And you're talking about dry in terms of a sweetness level, or
sweetness. Yeah. Sauternes is like a dry grape.
No. Wait. Okay, now hold on a second. Sauternes is, I mean, my knowledge of Sauternes is a dessert wine. I mean, Chateau de Chem.
But when you drink it, the finish is quite dry on a Sauternes finish. When you on the sweet wine itself, it's not like, say,
I mean, it's not syrupy sweet. I mean, that's beauty of Sauternes. It's impeccably well balanced. That's what makes Sauternes.
You get more citrusy kind of
apricot notes.
Apricots, citrusy kind of notes. So you get kind of those, and also with the French oak is kind of going to give you a bit more spice as well, and on a finish as well. And I found, the finish is probably, maybe it's because we're playing with the same blend of whiskey. So, and the finish, as we pointed out, like I would agree with the finish on the Sauternes is shorter than the other 3. When I try Sauternes dessert wine, I'd say it's different to, say, I don't know, a Malaga sherry cask, kind of sherry wine, or say maybe not, but I just find it's not like a Marsala. It's not like a Marsala, or it's a bit more.
Sauternes,
abrupt.
One of the things that makes Sauternes a really good or a great Sauternes so desirable is not the sweetness, which is there, but the acidity. So maybe that's what you're.
Yeah, well, I think that's what
the acid level is a little bit higher, etc.
Oh, like I'm not beating down on Sauternes. I think it's a wonderful grape, wonderful wine. But the cask itself, it's a difficult cask to work with, and I think it's because of the elements that make Sauternes what it is. To make it as a finish for whiskey, it's more difficult. And it's, but yeah, it's just interesting that the second fill compared to the first fill, it's very. If I was to give you the first fill compared to the second fill, you'd notice a big difference between the two in regards to just the unbalanced. Like the second fill, what you're tasting is far more balanced than the first fill. So it's just, that's the kind of game we have to play with in regards to how you finish an aged whiskey. It's just you don't know what the cask is going to give. So yeah, it's fun, but it's
I have a question about
I was
Sauternes.
a little upset at first that we didn't get the first fill, but now that I'm hearing how the second fill is better on each of these.
Told you our shop should have been second fill spirits.
No, we would have, yeah, that would have been tough.
That's the next shop. That's the next shop. I'm curious about Sauternes casks in the first place, because I know I enjoy a very nice Sauternes when I'm having a really wonderful dessert. I'm not really familiar with the size of the casks. Are they the same size as regular wine barrels, or do they come in smaller sizes or bigger?
No, well, I mean, we do liters. It's 225 liter. So that's
a regular size cask. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, bourbon cask is 200 liter. You know, French oak is always 225 liter. So that's kind of,
so it is a
it's fairly chunky. But it's the difference is the European oak. French use European oak instead of American oak in the construction. So you're going to get, you know, probably different kind of elements of esters and tannins from it. Yeah, I don't drink Sauternes at all that much. So that's the problem here. I need to start drinking more dessert wines just to broaden my flavor profile.
Yeah. With the first fill versus the second fill, the residence time was the same? Or
no,
are you tasting it all along, or what's?
No, like the Sauternes was done. Like we took it out after, I think it was 60 days, 59 days, something like that. Sauternes, and then first fill, and then second fill was like 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so like double the time, but like the advantage the second fill got was it went through a winter period and then into the spring period. So during the winter, you're going to get like the nights, it doesn't go above 10 degrees, say where we're, you know, during say November, December, it doesn't go above 10 degrees in regards to, and that's just good for a slow finish. And then as you get into the hotter months, it allows the wood to expand a bit more. So I always find winter finishing is probably a bit better in the long term for whiskeys, because you don't get that intense blast from the cask in the hot summer days. But yeah, they're all different things we kind of play into the factor. So it's just another element of. Now
you are talking Celsius, so
50 degrees.
We can figure.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I forgot you have that strange Fahrenheit.
Yeah, we're very.
While I find the apricot cask to be a little bit more interesting and unique, I would go back to this more frequently than I would to the apricot.
Oh, that's good. I mean, it's rare we get someone who chooses the Sauternes over the apricot. So I'll cheers. I'll cheers.
John is pretty rare, I have to say.
I'm not fully cooked yet.
He's just mildly seared.
It's people from Brooklyn are always rare.
Here comes.
No.
And we're still only on the fourth place.
Yeah, we've got what, 4 to go.
Let's move on to Tawny Port. So what are we talking here? Tawny Port. Was this a popular one? First fill? Was it too much? First fill?
Tawny Port. Yeah, this sold out. This was. Tawny Port again. You're going to get kind of that summer fruit. You know, a bit like a small raspberry, strawberry, cherry. Tawny Port again. It's a bit more richer. Yeah, it's a bit more richer than the other ports you find. So, sorry. I personally, where I can find my sample. Here we go. I personally love the Tawny Port. I think it's my I kind of go for that summer fruit, you know, that aspect of the whiskey. This was finished. This spent the longest in the cask out of all the four, because the first fill was actually the shortest, because of the Tawny Port. We ripped out a lot of the flavor and the tannins in the first fill. The second fill, it took the longest to finish it. So. First fill was it was like less than a month.
Wow.
It was like 3. Yeah. So it was like
ripped it out in less than a month.
I mean, it was so like, you know, we filled up like maybe a couple of like a liter. There's like a liter of port still in the cask when he emptied it, so it was like soaking wet. So when we threw the whiskey into that, then it kind of just absorbed everything. And so we didn't want to overdo it. Again, I think it was just probably misjudgment on our part. We should have probably washed out, or we should have probably done some bit more with it. But the whiskey was actually turned out amazingly nice. And so, but then the second fill the second fill just took a bit longer. But yeah, just chocolate covered raisins. Exactly. That's the kind of notes we're going to get. You're going to get a kind of a chocolatey cake kind of dessert.
I'm just more worried why Holly knows what an Arby's strawberry milkshake tastes like.
I know what it tastes like. I've had those.
Yeah, they're just super thick, like pudding. Yeah, I don't know. It's got this really creamy nose.
Got to eat it with a spoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Thank you.
Water here too. A couple of drops of water.
Try some water with this one.
Beautiful thing.
I need some. Oops.
Like dessert.
Again, I think the mouth feels a bit different for me. I think it's a bit more body in this one. It's a bit more velvety, I find. But yeah, like lots of chocolate.
This one.
But again, you wouldn't think it's the same. You wouldn't think it's the same blend. You think it was different from the previous blend.
Yeah, for sure.
You know? The cask is just kind of shone through. It's kind of given its own character.
This is lovely on every level. Really is lovely on every level. The chocolate, the balance, the finish, and with water, wow.
Yeah, water really helps these.
Brings the chocolate out.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I like, high cask strengths, high alcohol whiskeys, I found that all of these on their own before a little bit of water are probably a little bit too much for my preference. With a drop or two of water, it changes completely. And I which is interesting. It may be because I rarely add water to high proof whiskeys. But these, I think, really benefit in a really nice way.
Yeah, I totally agree, John.
Charles, should we change John's shirt instead of it saying, "Does that come in cask strength?" Change it to, "Do you have a water dropper?"
Ooh, ouch.
Oh, that's
no, it's a special shirt for you.
Oh, Holly.
It's still a John.
I thought we were friends.
John.
As long as it says on the back, you taste the chocolate.
No. John, it's a compliment because that means you are still buying cask strength whiskey. It's assuming that it's cask strength. So
I like this. It's like eating a Hershey bar.
You can write it or say it.
There's a little bit of salt on the finish here. Salted caramel.
Oh yeah, good shout. Yeah, I mean it's what I haven't tried all these whiskeys side by side in the last 6 months, so it's like a new adventure for me.
Does it have to do with being at midnight or not?
No, I drink way past midnight. Don't worry.
Oh, okay, good.
No, just we're just so busy.
We're not keeping you up. Okay, good.
No, absolutely not. My other half has gone to bed long ago, so she doesn't care. No, we're so busy with a new warehouse set up, and we just haven't, given that we shipped these to the United States like a year ago, it's now only coming.
Yeah, just remember, there's only 250 bottles of these, so it's very limited. And again, we only have 2 of these in the shop, except for the Apricot Brandy. So
and that's only one of those.
It's only one of those, yeah. So actually, the person who bought that couldn't join the tasting tonight, so he was like, I'm gonna buy one just so I know what it tastes like, and that was the one he picked. So good pick on his part.
Nice. Yeah, what do you think? So the port cask in question, it had a 10-year-old port in it, 20 ports, and I think not a massive port drinker myself, but the difference I do know between port, 20 ports is it's got a bit more richness to it, and we have seen huge, Redbreast have done a couple of port finishes which have been a huge success. Their dream cask, their first dream cask was a port finish.
This would be a great pairing with the blue cheese.
Oh, good shout.
Well, next to whiskey in my house, port is the second most consumed spirit in my house. So
really,
a lot about ports. Yeah.
Oh,
my wife and a lot of her friends like the port, so I really got into it. So I guess that's why I appreciate the whiskeys with port even more, because I drank so many ports.
Vintage or otherwise?
What's that?
Vintage or otherwise?
Vintage
late bottle, vintage? Or...
Yeah, just different vintage ports, and people always bring a good bottle over my house. Some of them are just good ports that, but 10, 12, 20, 25-year-old ports I've had. And then some that are a little younger, like the Three Grapes, which is, what's the Coburn or one of those, Graham's Three Grape. Very nice, things. So that's why I love, anything finished in port. I'm there because that's probably the second most consumed beverage in my house, port.
Yes.
All right.
You have to remember that a vintage port is not a better port than a Tawny.
No, I disagree.
All right.
Depends on the vintage.
It depends on which slice of Spumoni Gardens you're. Oh, wait, sorry. Okay, so we're going to go.
Wait. You're not allowed to mention Bourbon, Charles.
Spumoni Gardens.
Pizza's coming next.
L&B.
All right, so history cask. I want to know what the hell this is that I poured into all of these little bottles that everybody's got in front of them. He sent me this bottle. It's got two little lines on it. That's it. That was what I knew. And I don't know why. I don't know if these are, obelisks, or is this like some special Irish obelisk?
That's their logo.
Charles,
Yeah.
is this whiskey sanitary?
I am not responsible if you.
Yeah, really. Which filter has this been through?
Yeah.
The Peaky Blinders filter.
Do you all have your tennis shoes on? Yeah. Who knows?
I'm sorry, I'm missing most of these references.
As long as it's not tainted potted meat, we're good.
So what is this? What are we talking about?
Hold on. I'm going to pour myself a little drop. So
and I do realize that this is a 700 ml after I poured it because there's nothing left of this one. The others were 750 mLs, and that's why we have.
Well, no, I want to.
So this is the mystery meat.
This is
mystery meat here.
Mystery. So we'll play a game. So if someone can at least guess. Maybe the Cask.
No, Beth Ann is here.
Or we can.
I'm getting a slight hint of sulfur on the nose.
Okay.
Slight, ever so slight.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
A bit of petrol.
Some grassiness.
It's grassy and oily, and a slight sulfury hint.
So it is cask strength. So we need to clear that up.
I agree, all three.
But it does have a bigger nose.
It's a bigger nose, and it's grassy, and it's petrol, and it's.
Excuse me.
Not the petrol bird, but it's.
But yeah, the petrol.
The taste is got that mustiness reminiscent of the rum cask we just tasted.
Yeah, I would think
that rum mustiness, because whenever you have that rum or anything aged in rum, in a good way, there's this mustiness about it that I kind of like. That's why I like tequila.
I would guess. Interesting thought. Yeah, I could see that.
So I still have some of the rum cask less. It's fairly similar.
Can we ask if this is a finish or is this a different blend?
This this is a single. It's a single distillate finished. So it's a single distillate of a certain type.
Are we
that's been
talking
finished.
malt or grain?
We're talking grain, single grain.
Okay.
Grain.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say a Jamaican rum.
But when I add water, I'm getting on the nose some pears or something.
Pear.
Well, it's neither rum.
He just Holly, he just said that it's a corn whiskey, probably. So
yeah, it's
Oh,
grain
sorry,
whiskey.
I'm running the shop, Shalom.
Pears on the palate with a little water. Wow. Getting it with the water.
It's really sweet. It has.
I can give away the secret if you.
No, not yet.
Hold on.
No. We love blind tastings.
Calvados? Little apple?
No.
I'm still thinking it's some kind of rum finish going on there.
Mint again.
No rum.
I think maybe the mezcal or tequila was.
No, it's not smoke. It doesn't have any smokiness to it to me.
No, that would rule out mezcal, but that doesn't rule out tequila.
Don't you think it's a vodka cask?
You're the closest fucking one.
All right, you're out, John. I'm officially booting you from the Zoom on that comment.
Then I'm gonna have to say it's either sherry or port.
I'm getting a lot of mint out of this as well, and chocolate.
Mint is there. Mint and
chocolate. Yeah. So
Charles, you don't need to boot John because we beat his team.
What team was that?
The Rangers.
Oh yes, let's go Rangers.
Yes,
the Panthers.
Oh please.
No, the Hurricanes meant.
Hurricane, yes.
I hate Tampa Bay worse than I do the Rangers.
All right. We're not talking hockey.
All right,
wait. We're not talking about Brooklyn.
This is not a hockey tasting.
No.
This drink is much hotter than any of the other ones. To me,
I disagree.
Donald, if there was more color to this, I would think it was a Cabernet cask.
Oh, right. No,
but it doesn't have a lot of color.
I think it's fairly young.
No,
I'm getting like an apple brandy. I don't know.
Yes.
I already said that.
Everything.
Should I put you out of your misery?
Morris, I like the gin thing. It's the Jubilee for the Queen.
All right.
We learned from all the tastings we had during the Advent calendar that the color sometimes doesn't really indicate what barrel or what it came from, because we were really surprised to see the lighter things were coming from things that we didn't recognize that were darker in the first place. So it has a very lovely lighter taste to it, and I can't cherries. So
all right, Dawn, put us out of our misery, please.
Yeah.
All right. So
it's a Jameson.
I wish we could get some Jameson just a bit. No.
This is a red breast finished in.
This is a 12-year-old single grain Cooley ex-bourbon finished in Buffalo Trace rye cask.
Oh,
63.11%.
Wow, very cool.
That's interesting.
And that's Cooley, awesome. I've lost track of how long Cooley was around. It has 12-year-old or more.
Oh,
yeah, they were so
healing with their 24, 30.
Yeah, I mean they've been around since the early 80s.
Yeah. Really? Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Forgive me.
Like, I mean, they don't exist as in session in Cooley anymore. It's Beams and Tory now. But like, they're Kilbeggan. Like Kilbeggan is the.
So this is something you did, or is this something you just got your hands on?
No, this is something we did. We did it in actually.
Bravo.
Oh, thank you. We took their 12-year-old grain. We had our own rye casks. We finished it in that, and we did it in a small package design called Time Well Spent, which had a 12-year-old. It was a 200 ml bottle of 12-year-old grain with a 20-year-old single malt. And we've done a release for the United States as well. So I'll actually have to ask Skarnik, would you guys?
Yeah.
I'll ask Skarnik. They should have some stock of it. So it comes in a comes in a little pack, a white box.
Yeah, we saw those, the smaller packs. Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, it's a single grain is kind of like it's a bit of an underdog in regards to the industry. So I think it's a phenomenal whiskey. I think it's very enjoyable.
Yeah, no, this is
Holly, to your question, I'm assuming it's a Sazerac cask, not a handy cask, because the handy casks are really expensive.
Yeah, Sazerac. Yeah, it will be. Yeah. We got a rye, like I didn't even know Buffalo Trace did 100%, well, not rye cask, but we got several Buffalo Trace rye casks. So
what is your thought? Just curious, what is your thought about rye whiskey being made in Ireland or Scotland or anywhere in the UK?
Well, funny enough, we've just we just did our own 100% Irish rye cask.
Okay.
So we did 9 casks. We went down to one and did a specific mash bill, and it became, rye is so difficult to work with that they gave up halfway and they could only do one mash. So we only got about 9 casks from the distillate. Yeah. And then so we did 100% rye, which was about, what was it, 65% malted rye to 35% malted. Okay. And then so we're looking
more of a European style rye.
Yeah. So we're gonna rye whiskey obviously isn't it? You know, when we think of rye whiskey in Ireland, it's blended with malt, so it's not really a thing here. But the unfortunate thing about living in this part of the world, you don't get to taste really good American rye whiskey. You know, you get some stuff, but you know.
Well, you should come to First Fill. We have a lot.
Yeah. Have you over.
One thing I don't understand about this particular whiskey is why, given the fact that it's 12-year-old, single grain, predominantly corn maize, not finished, but aged in ex-bourbon barrels and finished in rye. Why doesn't it taste more like a bourbon?
Because you got the heat. You got the heat in the States. You know, we you know, if you get a temperature above 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Ireland, you're you know, that's like but like, you know, you're
not getting the sweetness from the heat from Kentucky.
Yeah, you're getting like an overdrive of intensity from the interaction with the wood, and so your aging process in Kentucky or Tennessee or elsewhere, it's 3 years is the equivalent of 13 years in Ireland. Like it's just there's no.
Agreed. It's the difference. 11, 12 years old, you said.
Yeah, 12 years old. So if you're thinking of a whiskey that's staying in a cask, and the fluctuation of degrees is probably maybe 10 degrees.
It's also it's not a new charred American oak.
Right. I think that's probably the difference right there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely true. Yeah. So it's so you're just going to get a far slower maturation.
John.
Also, I think you said, I'm sorry, Charles.
No, that's okay. No, I mean, but think of like a Scotch and an ex-bourbon. You're not getting any sweetness from the barrel, you know, and with grains, it's more about brightness. It's more about, you know, the fruity notes than it is about sweetness when it comes to ex-bourbon. So, if anything, it would be the rye barrel that it was finished in that would bring any kind of possible sweetness to this, which it doesn't in this case. But I love how it works together.
What I was going to say is I thought you said it was mostly maize with some malted barley.
Yeah, it's about 95 to 5%. 95%.
95, whereas most bourbons would have some small grain of rye and wheat added to the mash bill, which might make a difference also.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I mean, in America, you've got your whole different industry.
This is also column still. You know, this is it's a very different process.
And really nice because of that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but there are corn whiskeys you can get in the States that are of that 95.5 mash bill. There are even some bourbons that are, but again, it's more like a corn whiskey because it's a high corn mash bill and it's in a reused barrel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure.
It's almost like a light whiskey.
Oh yeah, I would say so. I mean, like it's got like citrus notes in it. I mean,
that's what I had on the palate. I had citrus as my primary note on the palate.
Yeah, it's got like a citrus, more of a spiced vanilla citrus note.
Yeah.
And it's got kind of more grassy.
I mean, you think about light whiskeys are refilled barrels for the most part. So
yeah,
it is that category.
I mean, and it's kind of like grain whiskey's kind of, for lack of a better term, is kind of shit on in terms of Ireland. Totally. You know, they don't. It's not as sophisticated, but we try to kind of maybe try and change that perception. It's like this is a nice whiskey that you could actually showcase to some of your mates and go, you know, this is something different.
And what I love about this is it's something that, you know, you talk about having just Sauternes for dessert. This with, you know, a chocolate mousse or something, it's just so sweet at the end. That sweetness, that chocolate, that milk chocolate flavor just comes right through my palate.
Yeah, milk chocolate, yeah.
Big time. It's like, wow, I've had dessert. I don't have to eat my Hershey bar. Okay. Or like my Blackberry.
Yeah, we've taken the exact same distillate. We've put it in Moscato casks. We've put it in what did we put it in? We put it in Marsala cask. We put it in a Madeira cask. And for some reason, the rye cask is the best one that complements it. Like the rest, you get a lot of the ethanol still punches through the dessert wine casks, and for some reason, the ex-rye cask is the one that just seems to have a more harmony. And it's just weird. We can't put our finger on why that is, but yeah, it's one we're going to probably release as a core as well, maybe in a couple of years, or maybe in a year's time, just because like we found so much popularity with this particular one. Now it won't be a cask strength. We'll probably cut it down to maybe something a bit more palatable, but
well, palatable is, you just could cut it down to something lower ABV. Let's not call it. So I was going to ask you with this mystery cask, if you've sent 2 cases to First Fill Spirits, but I guess you said that would be in the future.
Well, this particular one, it's going to come. Well, we shipped over. It comes in a box of 200 ml. One's with a 20-year-old single malt finished in rum cask, and this 12-year-old is finished in rye cask with a glass. Actually, one of these Glencairn glasses.
So, oh wow! I need one of those.
So
we can actually get those boxes too. I'll send an email out to everybody who might be interested in that. But I think there were still some of those available.
Oh, nice.
Okay. Now, Donal, you did hold up that glass briefly, but that looks like what we think of a Highland Glencairn glass with the longest stem, as opposed to the shorter ones here. Is that?
Oh, so it's a Cupida. Sorry, it's a Cupida glass.
Oh,
yeah, it's
Cupida,
a
Cupida. Yeah, so it's actually
Cupida.
It's a branded Cupida.
Branded, okay.
There we go. So you get one of these. So that Glencairn as well do these, you know.
Okay.
I'll send an email out about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So are you saying that this is or is not available in the US?
It is in a small format. So they have a box set. It's I'll send information out on it.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. All right, so we're gonna end up with one more that he sent over, not available here. This is a peated stout cask. So so this is a different blend. This is I'm just reading the back real quick. 30% peated malt, 60% stout malt, and 10% double malt. So very different blend here. So same deal. You went there and you basically came up with this blend for this.
I'm sorry, Charles. You said it's a stout malt.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'll let Donal explain.
Good, thank you.
I love that Peter's jumping right in there.
It's almost my bedtime.
I'll join you. I'll join you. Yeah, so stout malts, our background, obviously, knowing a lot of breweries, craft breweries in Ireland. We have a recycle program where we send ex-bourbon casks that we purchase down to the brewery to finish an imperial stout in, and they send back the casks in which we finish our peated single malt in. So when we comprise of this blend, 60% stout malt is essentially it's triple distilled single malt. It's finished in a imperial stout cask that previously had it. So it's a stout cask that is basically been finishing the whiskey. And then we've got 10% double malt, double distilled malt, of course, and then our 30% triple distilled peated malt. So this one is a little different to probably what you're used to on your palates. It's our only peated single malt, but if you get it.
It smells so sweet.
So is this the stuff that goes into the Connemara?
No, probably.
So is this from Cooley? Connemara is made by Cooley.
This is G&D also. So this
okay.
Is, So on the nose, you're going to get more something like fresh hay, rhubarb kind of a nose, more fresh, a bit more kind of light. It's not really an intense Ardbeg or the Freud type of peated malt. It's going to be a bit more fun, a bit more playful. It's a bit sweeter on the nose, a bit more tropical.
Getting some oiliness on the nose too.
There's a lighter in proof.
Much lighter, 48%.
Yeah, so. 96 proof. So
does not need water.
No.
I love the nose. The nose is awesome.
And it's got a bit of a briny texture, briny nose to it, a bit of salt, saltiness to it.
Really nice.
So yeah, this is one we really like. I mean, it's peated whiskey isn't massively popular in Ireland, but we've played around with this in cask strengths. We finished in different casks too, and so yeah, we're waiting for our good folks, High Road Spirits in California to take this on.
Sure.
I found that for starting with Westland. Some of the beer based beer cask whiskeys, they've been making it really, really tasty and unique. And this is right there with them.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. No, we're very fortunate. We work with a brewery that do a lot of traditional Irish beers.
Which brewery?
They're made it's Brehan Brewery, and they actually brought out a beer to coincide called Oakenmers, which is an imperial stout, but they use a lot of oats in their stout beer, and it just seems like there's some reason stout and peated malts it just seems to marry really well for this one. A lot of chocolate, kind of espresso note. There's a bit of like that kind of sea line, that kind of saltiness to it. There's
lots of brininess.
Yeah, salted toffee, like a salted toffiness. It just kind of sticks to your teeth. But this one, like we don't really shout about it that much, but it's huge in Germany. It's very popular in Germany and more countries, and
probably like the favorite of the night, which is bad news for me. My favorite.
But like, it's not like, I mean, in America, I think, or even in Ireland, it's peated whiskey isn't that it's not as popular. So
Charles, is this available?
No, this was sent over by Donal.
Thank you.
Sounds like it will be though.
Well, if we get our good folks at High Road Spirits, they're based in California. If we get them to agree.
High Road is great, by the way.
Yeah, no, they're good out, and we love them. People, the bits. Yeah, they're absolute legends.
They're great with Japanese whiskey too. So
where are they, in San Francisco?
I don't know about that. I can't remember.
No, they're not. Near San Diego, I think.
Yeah, I think they're Southern California. Yeah. So I know we've been going. It's 12:37 in Donald's world. I just
you're good.
Before everybody signs off, and just cheers to Donald. Thank you so much for this wonderful tasting. 2 Stacks is great. I can't wait to go over there. Maybe we'll do some collaboration barrel at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
That would be awesome. But this was really, really fantastic. And we love Irish whiskey very much. And I'm so excited for the renaissance that's happening in Ireland, because it's only benefiting the rest of the world. So, and the Irish as well. But
no, appreciate it.
It's all good. It's very good. So thank you so much for coming on and sending those bottles to us too. That's really special.
Thank you. This was great.
Thanks, Charles.
And we'll stay on.
Good health.
Great.
Thanks so much.
We're gonna stay on. I'm gonna stop the video. So.